welcome on back to the 4th and 30 podcast. Glad to have you guys again with us here this week. Week 3 is about to wrap up. Little time travel. We're filming this before Monday Night Football kicks off. Sorry I was gone last week. I had some family stuff to take care of. A little bit of traveling, see some folks that never got to see my kid before. But there's been some exciting games, at least I think they were exciting, this last Sunday for football. And primetime did not disappoint again. Have you guys noticed that? Primetime has been on point this year. But we'll start back out we'll start easy. I know there's some discussion from the way the group chat was, but we'll start easy. Bills are back. Josh Allen looked good. I don't know what's happening with Washington's defense right now, but the Bills did whatever the hell they wanted to do there on Sunday. That was impressive to me.
Yep. Josh Allen threw for 358. Bills look good. Bills were my pick to be in the Super Bowl along with the Rams. I thought they would get there, but I thought they would have some ramping up time to take this year. Maybe 5-6 games to get into it. And since week 1, they've just been on a tear. So Buffalo's looking pretty scary right now.
Yeah, their offense looks deadly, to say the least. Washington also is the opposite. I think a lot of people were expecting Washington to rival for that NFC East crown, and they have not looked good at all. They've looked bad. I honestly don't have anything to say about them. Their defenses look bad. Their offenses looked as bad as we expected it to be. Like, there's nothing good to say about Washington right now.
Not that Heineke can't prove himself further, but I think some of the signs of why he went undrafted are starting to show a little bit.
And they'll, that I think a lot of people expected that. Their defense clearly hasn't played up to par like it did at the end of last year, which is how they won. They weren't winning by scoring 30 points a game. So they're averaging 22, 23 points a game right now, which isn't bad if they had that defense playing like they had last year. It just hasn't happened.
Yeah, they haven't put any pressure on the quarterback, and last year they were one of the best pass rushers in the league. I mean, and they're just getting torched. I don't even know.
And then one of the games that I was excited to see, but I mean, that game plan was just atrocious. The Bears versus Browns. That was not a very pleasant experience for Justin Fields' first start, I would assume. So 68 passing yards, 12 rushing yards, and then 67 sack yards. So, in essence, when he was on the field, he got him 13 yards. That's not good. But do you think Matt Nagy threw that game to try to prove to the media that that's why we were starting Andy Dalton?
I think that there's a lot of people are saying that. I think Matt Nagy came from Kansas City. I had a lot of hope for him being a good coach when he went to Chicago. I think Matt Nagy is just inept. I honestly think he has no creativity on offense. Their offensive game plan with Dalton or Fields, it doesn't matter who's back there. It looks terrible every time. They have one of the worst offensive lines in football. I think I saw a stat where they dropped back to pass 30 times, and 21 of them there was no help to block the rush. They put 5 offensive linemen to block, and that's it. With Justin Fields in there, they didn't roll their offensive line out, but 3 times the entire game, and the first time it was in the middle of the second quarter. I thought Matt Nagy, being with Andy Reid and with all the offensive minds that were in Kansas City, I thought that offense would be very creative, and it's been quite the opposite. It's been ugly, and they're wasting a good defense too. They have a good defense in Chicago, and
yeah.
And Matt Nagy
in that clip you sent, Rex Ryan said it, is they don't have a championship winning defense, but they have a championship caliber defense. The defense isn't quite good enough to go win the Super Bowl on its own, like that Broncos defense was. But I can't see a coach intentionally throwing a game and getting away with it without somebody on the staff blowing the whistle somewhere. I mean, you got to think about how many people that it would take to pull that off, to intentionally sabotage Justin Fields. So I'm going to lean to the side of just inept. He just wasn't. He thought he could just plug a player like Justin Fields into Andy Dalton's role, and he will make the dynamic stuff happen on his own, and that's not how it works. And that's hard for me to say as a a guy, an armchair coach, but that's sure what it looks like. And if that's the case, Chicago doesn't stand a chance if he's going to head coach them through the end of the year.
I mean, there's zero chance that he threw that game on purpose. I mean, he's on the hot seat. He clearly wants a head coaching job, and you're not going to throw a game just by the quarter. I mean, you'd have to be very, very crazy to do something like that. And you're not going to plug Justin Fields into a system, and you're not going to change the whole offensive system for him. So, the offense doesn't work with Dalton. It doesn't work with Fields. It's probably just the scheme that's not working. And, he's just not getting the job done.
And on top of that, we only saw it in the preseason, but Trubisky looked great in Buffalo this preseason. And Trubisky looked like a train wreck in Chicago. There's a trend.
Eric Bieniemy, next head coach of the Chicago Bears.
I don't know
Hopefully
if
not,
they would because
but
it's another Chiefs assistant. I don't think they would do that because
But
that they just hired the Chiefs offensive coordinator and it didn't work.
Bieniemy's going to USC.
If he leaves, I'd rather him go either to UFC or the NFC. I know that.
He turned that. He said he has no desire to go to USC. At one time, he said if he was going to go to college, USC would be it. But recently, he said he has no desire to go to USC.
Urban Meyer also said that, but we'll see what happens here in a couple weeks.
Urban Meyer might be looking at that USC job really hard right about now.
I'll keep
Matt
the lake
Nagy
house.
might be too.
All right. So we'll we'll do this one. Rams versus Bucks. I'm going to walk back some things real quick. Rams look good. Very good. Very, very good. And you will see them on top of my power rankings when they come out here in a couple days. So I was hand up. Wrong. I was wrong. The Rams look damn good. I'm just going to leave it right there.
Yeah, I mean, so here's my thing. Is it kind of like when teams play the Chiefs, like we talked about last week, how every game is that team's Super Bowl up until the actual playoffs start? This was a statement game for the Rams, and this was a Week 3 game for Tom Brady. Now, like I've said, Rams are my choice for the Super Bowl. I think they are the best team in the NFC. I think that proves a point. And Tom Brady had a fairly good game, too, in this game. They got beat, but he had a fairly good game. Come playoff time, it'll be different. I'm not saying the Rams will win. I'm not saying the Bucs will win. I'm saying this was a good game for the Rams to propel them into, we are an elite team. We need to run with this. But this was a Week 3 game for Tom Brady. That's the way I look at it.
I agree with everything you said. I think the biggest takeaway for me is the Buccaneers defense hasn't looked like we expected it to look. The Rams defense looked very good. Brady looked good. And like you said, come playoff time, Brady will even look better. He just somehow does it. But the Buccaneers defense looks more like it did early last year than it did late last year. And that would be my biggest concern if I was Tampa Bay right now. They look like they got in a shootout with the Cowboys. They let the Rams score. They look like they can't stop anybody right now. And Tampa Bay's offense is very good, but I don't know if they're good enough to carry a team that's not going to stop anybody.
There's one key difference in what the Buccaneers are doing right now than what they did on their Super Bowl run. They only ran the ball 13 times, and 3 of those were quarterback sneaks by Tom Brady. So I think you'll see the Buccaneers get back to running the football a little more, keeping their defense off the field, controlling the clock. And yeah, the Rams clearly beat them yesterday, but it's Week 3. A lot of things are going to change from now until the end of the season. So it doesn't mean the Rams are going to win it all, but I have had the Rams at number 1 in my power rankings since February. So I think it'll continue for a little while. But Buccaneers will be just fine. They're going to get back to running the ball.
For all the fans
Buccaneers
out there,
are very thin at cornerback right now. They have a lot of injuries at cornerback.
for everybody watching this, we're going to overreact to everything. It's still Week 3, though. I mean, there's still a lot of game to be played about all these teams, but it's just the nature of the game to overreact to stuff.
Bucks will be fine, but that was a huge win by the Rams.
Agreed.
All right, Kyler, what's going on in Pittsburgh?
Well, I mean, they're not healthy. I mean, Let's face it. When 4 of your front 7 is out the second and third week of the year, you're going to struggle. They pressured Joe Burrow on one drop back the whole game. That's not Steeler football. Once they get these guys back, they'll start to look a little better. They're not as bad as they've looked, but the concern ain't on defense. The concern's on offense. And, as bad as the offensive line has been, it's going to be hard for, any quarterback to play in that. But just watching yesterday's game, even when your offensive line is consistently that bad, you start getting fidgety and right now that is in Big Ben's head. So he's got to find a way to overcome that, because there's plays where he has time to throw and he has people downfield that he's missing. I expect them to get better at that. But there's a long ways to go. They've got to fix some things on the offensive line. But more importantly, they got to stop dropping passes and making the routine. If they make the routine plays, they're in that game. And if their defense isn't decimated, they're in both the last 2 games. So it's not as bad as it seems, but it's not good right now. The only thing you can say is there's a lot of football left. And they still do have a championship caliber defense when healthy.
Yeah, that's the thing, is they got to get healthy, because the Steelers have one of the best pass rushes in football, and the Bengals do not have a good offensive line. And with TJ Watt out and those other guys, but I think TJ Watt's the key here, they got one pressure on Joe Burrow. Now, I don't know what the turnover situation was. I didn't look at that. Did the Steelers
Ben had a very bad interception. He had 2 interceptions on the game, but one of them was really bad.
So they turned the ball over twice, which is 2 more than you want. It's not atrocious, but Big Ben threw for 320 and Najee Harris ran for 100, and they only scored 10 points.
Najee Harris only had like 40 yards rushing. He had 100 yards receiving.
A lot of those yards.
I was looking wrong. Yeah. He had 100 yards receiving. Mixon had 90. Okay,
those
so then
yards are blank yards. They came in a lot of garbage time.
Yeah.
Soft defense.
Well, I was completely wrong. I read the receiving column instead of the rushing column. I thought he ran for 100. I'm like, that's not a good sign if Big Ben throws for 300 and Harris runs for 100 and you only score 10 points. But I stand corrected. So,
when's the last time Pittsburgh had a 100-yard rusher?
It was week 6 last year, James Conner.
Long time.
Yeah, I think Kyler touched on all of it. Their defense, when healthy, is going to be one of the best in the NFL. They'll keep them in games. The biggest question mark right now is their offense. I think that's going to be the story for the Steelers. Can their offense get anything going? Because I think eventually your defense is going to get healthy at some point, you'd think. I don't know. It's very thin, so each injury does hurt you guys a lot. But as long as your defense gets healthy, you'll be in games. But the question is going to be if your offense can produce points.
I'll say this. A lot of people are panicking. It's not time to panic. 2 years ago, without Big Ben got hurt in the second year. They start 0-3. They finish 8-8. Won 5 games in a row. They just got to get healthy and establish some offense and change some things up. Any team now there's some 0-3 teams that probably have no hope this year. There's a handful, but 1 and 2 teams, the Chiefs less even so. It's not time to panic. You just got to work on some things, get healthy. There's teams like this every year that go on a run, and
you do have kind of a rough stretch though. Packers, Broncos, Seahawks, Browns.
Yeah, it's not going to get any easier, but as a team, you just got to focus on yourself. You can't worry about who you play.
Yeah. Alrighty. So Big Ben, you still good with Big Ben?
If we had a better option at quarterback, we would not have brought Ben back. He would be retired by now.
The thing about Big Ben though is at this stage in his career, he needs time to throw the ball. He's smart. He's got a good arm. He can dissect a defense. The problem is he's not getting any time. So, he's got the same mobility as a 120-year-old tree. So, it's hard for him. It's not good on either side of it. Big Ben can't move his feet to relieve pressure, and Pittsburgh can't give him the cover or
space he
the
needs.
blocking that he needs, the time that he needs. So, I'm sure they'll get it figured out. Mike Tomlin's a great coach, but something needs to happen.
Last year he averaged, I think it was 2.25 seconds to throw the ball, number 1 in the NFL. And this year he's number 1 in the NFL again. It's like 2.3. He still flashes every once in a while and drops a dime in there. The problem is that everything's just happening way too fast. The play's not developing. Receivers haven't even made their breaks yet. So that's what they need to figure out.
And I'm not, to build on that, 2.25 and 2.3, there was a time when Ben could evade the rush. That time's long gone.
Yeah.
One of his best assets when he was younger was being able to get away from pass rushes. And that's in the history.
Was
now.
it so much being able to get away from them or run them over when he tried to tackle them?
Yeah, he stood. He somehow he got a good pass off. So he can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
That 120-year-old tree, he was an 80-year-old tree back then. He was just strong. All right, Kelsey, it is time for you to defend your Cardinals, bud. I know they're 3-0, but they were losing in the third quarter to the Jaguars, and they didn't look all that impressive against the Vikings last week. I am not as high on them as you are. I think I have them pretty appropriately placed in my power rankings because you cannot be losing in the third quarter to the Jaguars. Just can't. I
think that you have them lower than everybody in the power rankings, I believe, by a significant amount. So I think you're the odd man out right now.
I think I'm right.
So did you see they had a muffed punt because a ball was thrown at the football? That was a big turn in the game. When
I sent that to the group chat.
I know that changed the field position. They got the ball at the 35-yard line or something like that. That was one of the things that kept the Jaguars in the game. The Cardinals still ended up routing that game. Their offense is still one of the best in the NFL. Their defense is so-so, but their offense is going to keep them in games. They have a big game this week with the Rams. We'll see how good they are.
So there's teams that have looked better than what they actually, I think they are, and there's teams that have looked worse. The Cardinals deserve some credit starting 3-0, but I'm not completely sold on them being a contender. I honestly feel like I had them a little too high in my power rankings last week. Obviously, you can't argue with 3-0, but something just tells me that they're not over that hump yet. And, we'll find out a lot more about them this week. They have to travel to LA. But top 10, I'd probably have them around 10. One of the top 10 teams in the league, but not top
Chandler
5.
Jones is still at 5 sacks on the season. All 5 of those came in week 1. Yeah, I'm just saying that, the Cardinals aren't.
Here's what the Cardinals
they're a team that's built for a fun time, not for a long time.
Remember when you guys thought the Titans weren't good? They've looked good the last 2 weeks. The Cardinals made them look terrible week 1. The Vikings just came off a win. They beat the Vikings, and they struggled against the Jags for a little bit and ended up winning by 2 touchdowns. They'll be fine.
The Steelers also beat the Bills in week 1.
They're 3-0, not 1-2. What are you talking about?
When the Steelers are healthy, they can beat the top teams.
They're 3-0, not 1-2. That's
but I'm saying there's some games that it's a fluke.
They're 3-0. They beat the Titans and the Vikings, who the Vikings just came off. The Vikings, I think, are better than what most people than 1-2. They've played tough schedule this year. They demolished the Titans in week 1, made everyone think the Titans were gone. I think the Cardinals are fine. That division is going to be the problem. That division is tough.
They're 1 field goal away from being 2-1, and then they had a third quarter deficit to the Jags. I'm just saying those are red flags that people are willing to look past, but I'm not going to. So we'll see.
Their offense looks great. Their defense is the question. Kyler Murray might be the MVP of the league right now.
I'm not disputing that. Derek Carr's in the conversation too.
Yeah, but that's a good point.
Anyway, we'll go ahead and move on to Chiefs Chargers. So we have a person on the podcast that was actually at that game, but are you guys going to observe your vow of silence and just look at each other's squares? They got into a little.
I've got plenty to say.
You got into a little pissing contest in the chat. So
go first because I want to hear everything he has to say.
No, apparently, if you do not have the Chiefs as your Super Bowl favorites, you cannot make a comment about them.
Nothing remotely close to that was said. first of all.
Okay, well, you also said that Chiefs fans are panicking saying the sky is falling when that has not even been insinuated in the group chat. There's been no talk of that. The Chiefs will be fine. They are one of the most, if not the most talented in the NFL. They don't have it figured out right now. And they will by week 8. They will be fine. They might end the game with in the season with only 2 or 3 losses. But that's not the team right now. They are in trouble right now.
So now that Cody went on his rant, let's talk about the game yesterday. Chiefs, 32 first downs to the Chargers, 21. Chiefs, 437 yards to the Chargers, 352. Chiefs outrushed them by 90 yards. Chiefs, the difference in the game was 4 turnovers. The Chiefs have shot themselves in the foot. The Chiefs are better than every team they played.
They shot themselves in the foot, and they lost the game.
Yeah, that's the biggest stat is they came away with the L and not the W.
Yes.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the Chiefs have outplayed 3 playoff teams. Yes.
And what do they have to show for it?
And everyone should be upset about that. But they're 1-2 against 3 playoff teams, and they beat themselves twice. They haven't even, no one's outplayed them yet. Calm down. It'll be okay. The Chiefs will be fine.
No one has said it's not going to be okay, though. That's the thing is you keep saying it's going to.
I wasn't referring to you. Social media is abyss right now. I live in Kansas City. Social media is going crazy. The Chiefs will be fine. I wasn't talking to you. You just got really sensitive in the group chat.
Okay. Right on.
Tyler, what do you see in this game?
Right on. Okay.
I think you guys hit on it. 4 turnovers. 4 turnovers did them in.
We should have been up 14-0 in the first.
The only thing I'd be worried about as a Chiefs fan is looks like there's going to be some competition in that division this year. That hasn't been the case in previous years. So they need to, not get too far behind early because I've seen teams, I've seen good teams miss playoffs before. I mean, it happens. You get off to a bad start and you get out to too big of a hole and it's just too big of a hole to climb out of. Not saying that's going to happen, but there is competition there. The Broncos have looked good. The Raiders are 3-0, but let's be honest.
The Broncos have played their combined opponents are 0-9.
There is more competition this year than years past.
Oh, yes. Sure. I'm not disputing that, but I mean, the Broncos have looked good against literally ranked 29 or 30, 31, and 32 teams.
Well, and the Raiders are this far from being 1-2. I mean, winning 2 overtime games. So, yeah. At this point, it's not panic time. But we've seen things like this in the past where Super Bowl winners miss the playoffs. Actually, where the team that loses the Super Bowl misses the playoff next year. That has happened a lot in the history of the NFL.
San Francisco just last year.
Everyone fell in love the last 2 years with the Chiefs being the comeback kids or the cardiac kids. It worked. It worked for 2 years straight, but at some point in time, that cat's going to run out of lives. So they've got to learn how to jump out to big leads and keep their foot on the pedal. Because there is no team in the NFL better at coming back and making a game when they're down and winning the game. But you got to quit living by that. It's playing with fire when it's unnecessary. As much talent as they have, I know it's the NFL. I know you can't just beat teams up every week. It's not that simple. But you got to quit digging. I mean, we saw it in the playoffs last year. They barely escaped 2 games, falling into big holes. And this year so far, Kelsey is exactly right. They should have been up 14-0 in the first quarter, but they weren't. And that they've got to quit doing the silly things to dig themselves a hole. They had some magic at the end of the game. They had some magic at the end of the game to make it a game. They played well down the stretch, but it just came up a little. It was just not enough at the end of the game. And they've got to quit doing that.
Wholeheartedly. Last year, we played way too many one-possession games. We just let teams stick around, and you can't do that. When you're better than teams, put your foot on the gas and put them out of the game. Don't give them a chance to win a game.
It was miserable betting Chiefs games last year. They were terrible against the spread last year.
Backdoor covers all day long for other teams.
Good God. So another team. What do we want to do here? Green Bay. So I really despise Aaron Rodgers at this point because he's kind of that Tom Brady-esque where you know his arm is going to get it done. They left him 37 seconds on the clock, and he got it done. It's just, which I know that's what your veteran guy is supposed to do. You know, your Rodgers, your Ben's, your Brady's, you know, your Mannings of past. That's what they're supposed to do. They've been in the league a long time, but like, come on, just please.
Okay, here's my thing: is take Aaron Rodgers out of the equation. He made 2 very good passes there, but how does Devontae Adams get that look twice in a row? I know you're playing shallow. I know you're playing deep. You're playing to not get beat. Like they're playing to not give up that play right there, though, twice in a row, and so and to the best wide receiver in that game for sure, if not in the game. You know, in the NFL. And
so you know what's irritating to me about this? The Chiefs were in almost the exact same position and lost the game. And it just shows you the difference between Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers right now. But also, one thing that irritates me about this is the route that the Packers ran is exactly what the Chiefs should have done. Packers had 2 guys going up the field, and Devontae Adams coming right behind that first line of zone defense across the middle of the field. The Chiefs had a timeout. They should have done the exact same thing. Had Tyreek run up the middle, somebody come across. Chiefs were throwing downfield for some reason instead of trying to get it up the field and set up the next play. But Aaron Rodgers he's Aaron Rodgers. The only thing you can say about Aaron Rodgers is he's apparently very difficult to play with and a pain in the ass most of the time. But the dude's phenomenal.
He's also very cocky and he gets complacent at times, and that's what comes back to bite him. And that's what I worry about with the Packers. That's what I don't worry about with the Rams. Those guys are hungry. So, you know, complacency sets in with the Chiefs, the Packers, the guys who have been doing it year over year, and you know that's what'll bite those teams. Aaron Rodgers could, you'd think that week 1 humbled him a little bit, but they let the Niners back in the game last night, and that will come back to bite you at some point. So it'll be interesting to see how those teams deal with that.
So after seeing Aaron Rodgers happy after the game last night, I was like, they said, one of the announcers said, "Oh, he's invested in this team." And I was like, yeah, he looks like he's pretty happy they won. Part of me is like,
invested in his next contract.
Yeah, that was my thought. I'm like, maybe he's not invested in the Packers. Maybe he's invested in his personal achievement of I won that game.
I agree. He's
it's
happy
a money
to come
year
back
for
to Green
one.
Bay and say, "Hey, look what I'm doing for you guys. Look how great I am, and you wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't here."
Yeah, it's definitely a money year, but when it comes to the end of the game like that, years in the league, that experience is just worth so damn much. So much. What other games?
Well, before we move on to week 4, I would like to say Vikings +2. You're welcome for anybody that watched our TikTok.
Stone cold pick of the century of the week again.
3-0. Check the box. Bet big money on it.
Alrighty. What about the Monday night game tonight? That has potential to be a pretty decent game. I mean, I know we crap on the NFC East all the time, but usually when they play each other, it's pretty competitive. I mean, we have a chance to get another good primetime game tonight. What are your guys' thoughts on Cowboys versus Eagles?
I mean, I'm still curious on the Eagles, and I don't think you're going to find out a lot tonight because NFC East games, no matter how good a team is, they're always tough division games. I do think the Cowboys are a pretty solid team. I think they got a chance. I'm not sold on the Eagles. Cowboys are at home. I got them -4. I think Dak had a little bit of a weak game last week. I think he comes out a little fired up. But I'm still going to be curious on the Eagles after this week. That's really what I think they can be good. I'm just not sure.
So yeah, I agree with a lot of what Kyler said there. I think the Cowboys will win this game, but I think the Eagles have to realize with how bad Washington and New York are playing, that's second spot in that East. They're probably thinking first spot, but that East division, other than the Cowboys, is pretty much wide open right now.
But you got to remember, Kels, what do the Cowboys do? Cowboys are going to what?
They somehow to cowboy him.
Cowboys are going to cowboy at some point in time. So I hate to say it, I would have probably picked the Eagles 4th in that division to start. I don't remember what I did say. They were either 3rd or 4th on my list.
I think we all picked them last.
And
Giants were last.
With Washington underperforming right now, And in all reality, it could be a thing. This is a big game for him, though.
Nope, I did put the Eagles last.
I think I said the Eagles and Giants would be neck and neck, but I ended up putting the Giants last, or the Eagles last. But part of me hopes the
Giants
Eagles
suck.
win this game just because next week the Chiefs have to play the Eagles and they lose
Have a
3
letdown
straight.
game.
And, yeah.
All righty. So do you guys want to do Eliminator first or go through? I don't see too many big games next week.
Panthers Cowboys is a big
I haven't
one.
even looked at my Eliminator yet, so let's go through the games first, then I'll have my Eliminator ready by the end.
One interesting thing, Brady's first trip back to New England. I mean, did you guys, they did a report on ticket prices for that game. They're like Super Bowl level prices.
Yeah, they were like in the thousands.
Yeah, and in that game let's see, the Buccaneers are favored by 6.5 points. That has potential to be cold stone pick of the century of the week because Tom Brady's coming out fired up for that one. I mean, coming off a loss, the Bucs are going to be ready to play, and I'm not sure the Patriots can hang. And
I'm not sure.
The over under is 49, and Brady might try to do that himself. Like,
yeah,
I'm sure he's going to be fired for that.
Yeah, that's how I feel. And potential to break the record, right? This week?
Yeah, the passing.
Oh, he will.
Yeah.
He will.
It's a foregone conclusion.
He needs 90 yards.
Yeah. Yeah, but he might try to break it by 500 yards. So
he might break it in the first 2 minutes of the game.
Yeah, first
if
drive.
there's any quarterback in the league that's going to know Belichick better than anybody, it's Brady. So, I mean, you've got to like his chances against Belichick there.
And even though that might not be a competitive game, I'm still going to tune in because of the record, because it's Brady versus Belichick. I think you're going to see Brady just of all the people like me who said Brady won some championships because of the defenses, which I do think is true, partly. He's going to be looking to tear that defense apart.
Yes, he is. Kind of a revenge game for Antonio Brown, too.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit.
A little bit.
In a way.
I think a lot of games AB will play from here on out as revenge game.
You got about 6 teams in a 1-year span, so.
Even if he didn't play for him, he probably has something against him.
Oh, the Monday night game next week looks good. Raiders versus Chargers.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Big one.
I think the Raiders living on the edge comes to an end in that one. I see that, eventually they're going to lose one of these games. The Raiders are going to Raider. I still believe that at some point this year.
The Chargers are the better team. Raiders are 3-0, but Chargers are a better team.
So I'm gonna. So for Eliminator, for just a second, I toyed around because I just saw this game here, and this is not my Eliminator to preface this, but it almost was Bengals over the Jags. But I
thought about it for a second.
I just couldn't
but I can't
put any faith in Week 4 in the Bengals over anybody. I was just like,
agreed.
Especially after the Bengals just won in Pittsburgh for the first time in 20 years. That's a trap game written all over it.
Short week too.
Thursday night. That's trap. Yep. Now the Bengals should still win, but that is potential for a trap game.
Agreed.
Yeah. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think of Panthers Cowboys? I think that's one of the better games next week where we'll actually find out about the Panthers. It's on the road. The Cowboys are actually favored by 4. I personally think the Panthers would cover that spread. Panthers have the number 1 defense in the NFL. Their offense, Christian McCaffrey is going to be out for this game. However, most likely.
Well, the way Sam Darnold's looked, I don't know if that matters. So.
But they've also had extra days to kind of game plan without Christian McCaffrey, too.
True.
So another game that I think is big. Sorry if you were still talking about that game.
No, I do think that game is a bigger game it's bigger for the Panthers than it is the Cowboys. Because we already know the Cowboys, NFC East, you're right there in kind of the middle of the pack. It's whether the Panthers will be able to compete on the year for a wild card. And maybe if they get lucky, the NFC South. Maybe. That's a big maybe because you got the Bucs and Saints in there. But, you win enough games, anything can happen.
Yeah. The way
And if
their
you're going to
defense
do
is
it, you have
playing,
to win games like this.
the way their defense is playing, they actually have more weapons than people give them credit for, and they have Christian McCaffrey and Sam Darnold's look good.
And they just traded for
Yep.
Henderson off the
Henderson.
Jags.
Yep, the Jags
That
just
is-
traded Henderson, so now they have 3 good corners.
That
3
is a huge
shutdown
pickup.
corners.
Yeah.
Well, 3 really good corners. I don't know if you'd say shutdown, but 3 really good corners.
My game next week is Baltimore at Denver. I think Denver's mile-high fandom is going to come crashing down. I could be completely wrong. We're going to find out whether Denver's made for it or not. I look for the Ravens to go in and take care of business, but I could be wrong. Wouldn't be the first
Is it
time.
in Denver?
Yes,
It is in Denver. And I was hard on. I thought the Broncos for sure would be last in the division, and they still could because the West has got a. I think the West has 4 good teams this year. But Denver's a lot better than what I gave them credit for. Their defense looks good. I know they've played 3 junk teams, but their defense looks phenomenal. Their offense has looked all right. If they can move the ball, they're going to be a tough team this year.
They got Spready Bridgewater back there.
That's the only thing I'm worried about for them.
The Broncos have a good defense and a good O-line. And they're playing the Ravens, who just got lucky. Yes, lucky to beat the Lions. So Denver's favored by 1 point. I think that's pretty close to about where the spread should be, personally.
The game I was looking at, and I don't know if everyone's already lost faith in this team or not, but the Colts and Dolphins, Colts 0-3, Dolphins 1-2. All of us had them as potential wild cards or playoff teams. Colts starting 0-4, or even the Dolphins starting 1-3. They're going to have a tough hill to climb if whoever loses that game.
At
Well, I
least
mean,
the
the Colts will
Colts
still have
in their division still have a decently easy road to win it because you've got the Jags and Texans in it. But, the Miami, if they get down, you're not catching anybody. I mean, the Bills are running away. So, 0 shot.
Yeah, the Colts are playing for the division. Miami's playing for a wild card.
I think the Colts already lost the division personally, but I think they do have a easier.
I agree too. I don't think they win the division. I'm just saying that's the Colts have the 2 teams are complete dog water division, and they may have looked the worst, or not the worst out of the 3, but they've looked as bad as the other 2. But
the interesting thing here is Jacoby Brissett is starting for the Dolphins against the Colts.
Revenge game.
And, the Colts may be wishing they still had him. But I think this is 2 teams that kind of overachieved last year. And they're kind of feeling the repercussions of that. Things aren't quite going as planned. Injury, they're getting hit by injuries and whatnot. And, they may be underachieving a little bit this year, but sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles.
Are the Colts phoning in Phillip Rivers right now?
I mean, I don't think they are because I don't know if they think they have a chance. I don't even think.
I know daycare is expensive for your 17 kids, but we really, really need you back right now.
Jim Irsay will watch his kids for him if he comes back.
Yeah.
All right. So I am going to give my eliminator, and I had a tough choice between 2 of these teams, but I am going to go Saints over Giants. The Giants have looked absolutely terrible, same as they have for the last 5 years. The Saints are far and away a better team. I can see the Saints screwing up and not covering, but I don't see the Saints losing that game. So the Saints are going to be my eliminator for week 4.
I'm going with the obvious choice here. Buffalo Bills at home against the Texans. If you haven't used the Bills yet, which I haven't.
I made sure to start nodding as soon as I heard Buffalo to know that I was in agreement. That is also my pick. Buffalo over Houston.
My pick is the Titans over the Jets.
That was my second pick.
I have that. I actually do have that wrote down. That was my second one. But I don't trust Tennessee. So Tennessee's defense isn't near as stout as some of these other teams the Jets have played. And, if the Jets want to have one lucky game out of 4, if you want to go with the 1-4 mentality, which I know I was high on at the beginning of the season, and I've knocked that down considerably. But if you want to go with that 1 out of every 4, you're going to get lucky. If this is their lucky game against not a weak defense, but a middle of the road to weak defense, this could be it.
I think that the Jets might be in contention with the Jaguars and maybe the Giants. They're probably the 3 worst teams in the league right now. The Texans, the only reason why I didn't pick I think the Bills will demolish the Texans. The Texans have looked all right. I mean, they're 1-2, but they've looked okay. They've looked formidable.
They did not look good without Tyrod Taylor.
Is true.
That's the only issue.
Davis Mills Mafia versus Bills Mafia. We'll see which one comes out.
Who did they play last week?
The Panthers at home on Thursday Night Football.
The week before.
They played the Browns.
And they played them close, and Tyrod didn't play the whole game.
Played most of that game.
I thought he got hurt in like the second quarter.
When he got hurt, it was tie game. They end up losing by 10.
All right. So there you go. We got Bills, Titans, and Saints next week.
Well, the Texans might wisen up and bring Deshaun Watson out sometime. Who knows?
If that happens, we get a clause to change our eliminator.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
I am keeping track of who everybody has used. So, Kai, you've used the Rams, Browns, Broncos, and now the Bills. Kelsey, you've used the Niners, Bucks, Cardinals, and now the Titans. Cody, you've used the Niners, Packers, Browns, and Bills. And then I've used the Niners, Bucks, Broncos, and Saints. So I have been keeping track every week.
Yeah, it's in that Google.
Giants with the upset this week. I'm calling it. That's such a Giants thing to do. Lay an egg at home against the Falcons and then go into New Orleans and win that game.
But it's the first game back after a hurricane. We know what happens when the Saints do that. I just don't see it.
That's a good point.
So did we talk about the Browns-Vikings game?
No. But the Vikings are going to play to their competition and make it competitive and then, lose it at the very end.
The Vikings are going to play up?
Yeah.
They're going to play better than what they are?
Just like they've played down to the people they've played. So
I think the Vikings are capable of being a good team this year. Kirk Cousins has looked good. Cooks look good. Their defenses look not great, but decent.
It's gotten better.
It's gotten a lot better than it was.
The second half of the Seahawks game, their defenses looked a lot better. And I saw something in the first 2 weeks, which is why I picked them last week +2. They look like a pretty good team. I mean, the Browns will be a good test for them. We're going to find out a lot about the Vikings this week.
Yeah, if they had a kicker, they could be sitting at 2-1 instead of 1-2. All right, so that covers the eliminator. I want to give a shout out to Gavin for leading our Pick'em league. Are we calling it a league?
Group? I don't know, but you don't have to give a shout out to him.
Well, I'm going to give him a shout out. He's leading after 3 weeks. So eat it. You're not leading after 3 weeks.
Raiders are also 3-0.
Cody, of the 4 of us, you are in last.
And that'll end today's episode. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
I think I'm 2 games behind Gavin. I don't know. I'm not far behind.
2
games and I'm 3.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, I do think that's gonna. Oh, if you didn't notice, there's some super swag going on a couple of the guys down there. Look at those. Look how nifty that is. So shirts are finally coming around to those of you that asked for them. So just be patient a little bit. You can see that they're made now. So just a little bit of time. They should be showing up real soon if they haven't already. I appreciate everybody tuning in again this week. Look out for those big games. Look out on TikTok for Kyler's pick of the century of the week. We'll see. We'll see if he gets cut off again this week. You never know. Maybe Cody will let him run a little bit. But until then, be good out there. Tell your grandma. This has been 4th and 30 Podcast.